Can you talk about your personal evolution? You were a veteran. What did you saw in combat that changed your mind, and how you became an anti-war veteran?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, and like a lot of people, I went to school to pay for college. I think it's really important that we reflect on what it says about us as a country that our only real federal jobs program or federal college scholarship program to scale requires you to carry a gun for the government. I really want people to think about that. And it's part of where my passion for shifting our priorities and making sure that we have a real moral budget and agenda, and that we're actually investing in life, right? And not just destruction for profit. But by the time I graduated and commissioned as an Army officer, I was a platoon leader, responsible for 40 lives. I took that responsibility really seriously, and I already had deployment orders to Afghanistan. And back then, we were supposedly deploying as part of withdrawal operations. The Obama Biden administration back then had promised that unconditionally we were leaving in 2014, no matter what. And so I was a part of setting up the logistics process for that with an engineer battalion, as well as maintaining security operations as people prepared for withdrawal almost 10 years ago, right? And so I went as a kind of true believer. I thought, okay, we're doing this the right way. We have leaders who are trying to do the right thing here. I am going to go protect the Afghan people from the bad guys and fight for democracy. But when I got there, what I saw was so obviously that we were just adding to the violence, that we were doing a lot more harm than good. And I could see the way that corporations were really running the show. And you had active duty troops on food stamps trying to take care of their family and their kids still, risking their lives every single day on the front lines. Meanwhile, you would find that there were corporate contractors that had been there for years making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so I came home knowing I didn't support what I was a part of, but I was confused. It took me a while to kind of make sense of what I had really been a part of. The Afghanistan papers came out as black and white evidence proving that our elected officials and appointed officials had been lying to our faces about the status of the war, the mission, right? So many different things. And, the only people who have really been held accountable for that are people like my friend, whistleblower Daniel Hale, who leaked the evidence that President Obama was bold-faced lying about drone warfare being targeted and precise. And that evidence showed that, in fact, 9 out of 10 targets that we were killing with our drone strikes were unintended targets, meaning innocent people, right? That we didn't intend to kill. And so, to me, that it was a process of kind of seeing the just obvious systemic injustices that were not only betraying the Afghan people, but also our troops, our veterans, right, who were sent to potentially kill and die on lies, right? That's not right. We should be able to trust that at a minimum, that if we're being sent to risk our lives and potentially kill and die, that it's actually for a just reason. And so, I think that it's important that we talk about that unapologetically, directly, truthfully. I think we can't change this system until we confront the truth of the scale of violence that continues to be underway, and the fact that our almost $1 trillion military budget, half of that goes to corporations. And a lot of people don't realize that, right? They think it's going to the troops, support the troops. That's kind of how it's sold by politicians. And yet there are over 40,000 active duty military families, at least. That's assumed to be a very low estimate because it's not well tracked, are on food stamps. And so, this system is really failing all of us, and we need the leaders who have the courage and backbone to stand up and say it's time for a change with credibility.
And what kind of organizing have you done around the war or anti-war activism?
I was in the reserves because I owed all this time to the military for my scholarship. And I definitely, as a working class person, couldn't afford to pay all of that back. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to kind of keep my head down and do what I have to do. But when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it really struck me like lightning, watching all of the people around me weaponize the flag and veterans like myself against a man for standing up for the very freedoms that we say that someone like me is joining the military to fight for and to protect, right? And I kind of wrote this long, passionate post articulating that I think that if anything is considered patriotic, right? If we believe in this idea of patriotism or love of country, that fighting for our country to live up to the values that we say that we believe in should be considered the deepest form of love and commitment, right? And I was surprised by how many people responded to me saying, you made some points I hadn't thought about before, but I still just can't support him because the veterans. And I realized how knee-jerk that reaction is, how conditioned that response is, right? It's not even logical for people at this point. And so I realized in that moment that I had a voice, that there was power in my voice as a combat veteran to speak truth about that issue, and that I had a responsibility as a person who participated in an unjust war to tell the truth about what was really happening and the need for change. I joined the Poor People's Campaign because Reverend Barber was, talking about Martin Luther King's original Poor People's Campaign, which talked about the interlocking evils of poverty, racism, and militarism, that those are so interlocking that we can't pick them apart. They're systems, right, that we have to address and understand. And adding environmental degradation. I quit my job. I started consulting so that I could jump in with both feet. And I became one of the founding coordinating committee members of the New York Poor People's Campaign. I went on to work on the national team. I joined About Face, Veterans Against the War, which is an organization of all post 9/11 military veterans doing anti-war advocacy, and eventually went on to work as the organizing director of that organization. And I've been a part of several different coalitional efforts in national movement to really build infrastructure and unity across working class people who often have checked out or feel feel kind of disillusioned for understandable reasons, but to say, look, we are the leaders we've been waiting for. We have the power when we come together to organize and make real systemic and structural changes. I consider myself a person who has dedicated my life to that cause, whether that's organizing in the streets or whether that's running for Congress to make sure that we have advocates who will boldly tell the truth in the halls of Congress. That is something that I anticipate dedicating the rest of my life to.